Today I will show you a South Korean dark comedy thriller film from 2019, titled Parasite. Watch out! Spoilers ahead. Ki-woo is a young man living in poverty in the slums of a South Korean city, with his father Ki-taek, mother Chung-suk, and sister Ki-jong. The Kim family lives in a small semi-basement unit where they struggle to get access to the internet, get fumigated on, and have to watch men pee in the alley outside their home. They make ends meet by doing menial tasks such as folding pizza boxes, and even then, get criticized by the pizza employees for messing up the boxes. One day, Ki-woo's wealthy friend Min-hyuk visits the family, and gives them a gift of a scholar's rock that is supposed to bring those who have it wealth and prosperity. Leaving to study abroad and knowing his friend needs the income, he suggests that Ki-woo pose as a university student to take over his job as an English tutor for the daughter of the wealthy Park family, Da-hae. Min-hyuk promises to vouch for him, and so he agrees and has Ki-jong forge credentials for him to take to his interview. Ki-woo interviews at the very wealthy Park family where he meets the housekeeper Moon Kwang, the wife Mrs. Park, and their children teenage daughter Da-hae, and young son Da-sung. Ki-woo realizes he needs to flirt with Da-hae to get the job, so he does. Mrs. Park pays him an exorbitant amount of money, and mentions they need an art tutor for Da-sung. Da-sung had a traumatic incident where he saw a ghost in the house, where he had a seizure and since has been needing help with his art. Ki-woo introduces them to his sister, who forges documents for herself and goes by Jessica, and she too begins making money hand over fist. When the Park's limo driver takes her home, Ki-jong leaves her underwear in the car, framing him for having sex in the car. She then suggests her uncle as the new driver, who is really her father. The last position is that of the housekeeper, Moon Kwang, who was also the housekeeper for the previous owner before the Park family lived there. In order to get her fired, the Kims exploit her allergy to peaches, causing her to have allergic reactions. They then convince Mrs. Park that she is seriously contagiously ill and cannot be around their son. She leaves, devastated, and Mrs. Kim is given the job fooling the Park family into hiring the entire Kim family. The Kim family enjoys their massive increase of income, and when the Park family decides to leave to go camping for Da-sung's birthday weekend, they take the opportunity to stay in the huge Park house for the weekend. They spend the evening drinking and eating and making a mess of the place. But then Moon Kwang abruptly appears at the door, claiming she was fired so quickly she left without being able to get something and just wants it back. Mrs. Kim reluctantly lets her in, and Moon Kwang runs into the basement and begins screaming, opening a secret passage behind some shelves. She goes to her husband, Jun-se, who has secretly been living in the bunker ever since the previous owner moved out in order to hide from loan sharks. She gives him food while Mrs. Kim looks on in horror. She tells Moon Kwang she needs to leave, and as Moon Kwang begs her to let them stay, the rest of the Kim family, who had been eavesdropping, rolls down the stairs and into view, and they call each other Dad, revealing themselves, which Moon Kwang films them on her phone and threatens to expose their ruse to the Parks. The Kim family manages to get the upper hand on them, getting them into the secret bunker, but the Park family calls. They've cancelled their camping trip due to rain and will be home in 8 minutes. The Kims scramble, trying to clean up as much mess as they can, keeping the other two in the basement. They manage to do a good enough job that the rest of the family is able to hide, while Mrs. Kim gives the Parks their dinner. Moon Kwang breaks out and runs upstairs. Mrs. Kim shoves her back down the stairs, where she hits her head and is severely wounded. Moon Kwang and Jun Se are locked in the bunker. Mr. and Mrs. Park end up sleeping in the living room in order to keep an eye on Da-sung, who is camping out in the backyard, forcing the Kims to stay under the table, frozen all night. Even as the Parks complain about Mr. Kim's smell, and then later, start getting touchy-feely. Eventually, in the dead of night, they are able to sneak out. They return home to find their apartment completely flooded with rain and sewage. Ki-woo takes the rock, and the family sleeps in a shelter for the night. The next day, Mrs. Park hosts a house party for Da-sung's birthday with the Kim family's help. Ki-woo takes the rock down into the bunker, finding Moon Kwang has died from a concussion she received during the earlier fight. He is attacked by Jun Se, who bludgeons his head with the rock and escapes, leaving Ki-woo lying in a pool of blood in the basement. He then enters the party, where he stabs Ki-young with a kitchen knife in front of the horrified party guests. Da-sung suffers another seizure upon seeing Jun Se. Mr. Park screams at his driver, Mr. Kim, who is trying to stop Ki-jong's bleeding, for the car keys to take his son to the hospital, and he throws them to him. They land under Jun Se, who is fighting with Mrs. Kim. She manages to kill him by fatally impaling him with a barbecue skewer, while Mr. Kim tends to a severely bleeding daughter. Mr. Park orders him to drive his son to the hospital. Mr. Park gets the keys but expresses disgust at Jun Se's smell. This triggers Mr. Kim, who snaps and stabs Mr. Park, killing him. Mrs. Park faints and Ki Taek then flees the scene, leaving behind the rest of the Kim family. Weeks later, Ki-woo is recovering from brain surgery. He wakes up in the hospital, where he had been in a coma for weeks. He finds out that Ki-jong has died. He and Mrs. Kim are convicted of fraud and sentenced to probation. Ki Taek is wanted by the police for Mr. Park's murder, but he cannot be found. Jun Se has been assumed to be an insane homeless man, and neither his nor Ki Taek's motive for the stabbings are known. Ki-woo leaves the rock in a river and spies on the Park's home, now sold to a German family unaware of its history, and sees a message in Morse code from a flickering light. Ki Taek stated that he escaped into the bunker through the garage, has buried Moon Kwang in the backyard, and sometimes sneaks upstairs for food in the kitchen at night. He also flickers the light every day, hoping Ki-woo will see it. Ki-woo writes his father a letter back. As he speaks in a voiceover, we see his fantasy take shape. He has a plan. He's going to go to college, and get a job, and make a lot of money. He's going to make so much money that one day he'll be able to buy the house himself, and all his father will have to do is go up the stairs and walk out into the sun. However, we can see that this is a dreamlike ambiguity as we see him back down in the half-basement where the movie started, descending from the cramped window space down to Ki-woo writing the letter to his father. What are your thoughts? Leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving me a thumbs up, turn on notifications and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe.